This episode of Be the Leader podcast is brought to you by the Emerging Leader Inner Circle Live event. If you are the leader of a group of people that have incredible potential and a hunger to grow in their leadership and personal growth journey, Emerging Leader Inner Circle Live is for you. We will be celebrating the year-long growth journey of the current members, introducing the next leaders to join, and giving everyone in attendance the opportunity to bring their emerging leaders into the room, into the inner circle. You can get your invitation by emailing me at david@davidmcglennon.com. Team rates are available. And now here's today's episode. Hey, welcome back again to the Be the Leader podcast. I'm David McGlennon, and I'm really excited about this episode. I'm highlighting an emerging leader that is part of my Emerging Leader Inner Circle, Kristin Kulikowski, and just want to introduce you to her first because she's an amazing leader, and I think you're going to really enjoy listening to her today, and I think we're going to have a great conversation. So Kristin is an experienced production specialist and manager in the print industry. She's been in the print industry quite a while, and she's also been in project management, account management, strategic planning, and business process development. And she's focused on lean principles. So I'm really glad to introduce Kristin to her today, to you today. I'm tongue-tied, but she is responsible for developing the master facility production plan to satisfy customer demand while optimizing inventory costs and determining labor targets for IDL print. So welcome, Kristin.
Thank you.
Sounds like you've got a lot of responsibility.
It sounds like it. I guess it made me sound important.
You are important. Yeah. No. Thanks for being on today. I've enjoyed having you in the inner circle. Tell everyone a little bit about your leadership journey.
Okay. Well, I started here at IDL in 1999. At the time, I was a young mother and a young wife, and I had just had my second daughter, who is now here working part-time. So I get to her. So when I began working at IDL, I started in a secretarial type role, and I became a project manager about a year after beginning, and really stayed in the project management role for the majority of my career here at IDL. I got to work on lots of different accounts, and I got to grow through the ranks and get to be a part of new business and emerging opportunities. So I work with a lot of great people. I was here when our company went from a privately owned company to a publicly owned company. So that was a big change, and also a big change in even my coworkers, because there was some turnover at that time, and we went to a new facility. So it was an interesting time for all of us. Most of my career, I was very content with working kind of on my own as a project manager, working with teams on the side, but really I was accountable for my own work and not for anyone else's. So, and that was how I liked it, because I was a mom, and I wanted to go home at the end of the day and be a wife and mom, and that was really my focus.
Sure.
It wasn't until my girls are older that I really became more interested in taking on additional responsibility, and I had an opportunity to start managing a new department in the building that I had to apply for and interview for, and had to, work actually against some of my closest friends here at work to get the position. But I got to develop this department after being asked to take it over. And it really opened my eyes to my love of working with people and managing people. And I was thinking about this today, that one of the things that actually made me interested in taking on more of a leadership role was outside of work, where I was involved in my daughter's marching band as a parent. And I was voted to be president, and it was the first I was in a leadership position like that. And it really helped me see the dynamic between people and how to work with certain people. And so it was outside of work. I wasn't being paid for it, but it was something that was a big part of my life. And I think what I learned there actually spilled over into my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great lesson, that leadership doesn't just happen in the workplace environment. Leadership happens everywhere. And I think it's a great learning as well, that sometimes the best leadership lessons are learned, let's call it outside the lines.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
I had to work with different people, understand different personalities, and still be successful for our children. So I had a personal, stake in it because
Sure.
my kids, I wanted them to be happy. So
Right.
now they're older and they're starting their own career. And I really took that time to start building and climbing the corporate ladder, so to say. So
Yeah. No, that's great. So, what was maybe one of the best leadership learnings or things that you picked up from that experience, from being the president of the marching band parents association? Because I was in the marching band too, so I know that's a thankless job, but it's an important job.
it is. It is. I learned that if you don't delegate and just want to make everyone happy, you're not going to succeed. You're just going to overwhelm yourself.
Yeah.
That was a big thing because I wanted to make everyone happy at first. You're not going to make everyone happy as a leader. And that's
Right.
an important lesson to learn early on.
Yeah.
What I think is important is to be empathetic without being a pushover. So still hearing people without just taking it all on yourself. So that was something that I think has served me well here at IDL too.
Yeah.
You need to speak your truth and say what you believe, but then in the end, you also have to work with the group for the greater good. So you have to make compromises, and those are all things that work both at my home life, with my volunteer life, and here at work.
Yeah, that actually brings up a really interesting point, and I think it's something that we talked about in the inner circle a little bit, and that is being able to have vigorous debate and being able to engage in healthy conflict for the purpose of gaining commitment for the team and actually looking out for that. So it's really interesting that you learned that early on. I don't know if you've connected the dots or not, but I mean, you learned that early from your experience in the marching band, but now you're using it in your work world too. That's great.
For sure. Yeah, it's definitely hard to back down when you don't think things are going the way they should, but I'm well enough aware that I'm not always the smartest person in the room, so I have to listen to others and work with them to make it work best for everyone in the company, not just even within the immediate group that you're working with.
Right. Well, and I think that takes a level of maturity to be able to understand that it's not so much that not the smartest person in the room, but it's the perspective of other people sometimes.
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time with having blind spots. It's one of the reasons why I have several coaches, because I've got blind spots. I mean, I don't have eyes in the back of my head, like my mom did. Now you're a mom, so maybe
that's
you
right. I have them.
You have them. I don't. But other people's perspectives, I think when we're open to those, that can be really, really helpful, especially because they may see something that we don't see. And at least for me anyway, it took me a long time to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. And being part of the Emerging Leaders Inner Circle, I also got to be in these group gatherings with peers that I may not have had the same reasons to be in a room together with, and to hear their challenges and their thoughts on how to make improvements was really a great learning for me, because you got to be in uncomfortable type role-playing situations and learn from them, which is not an opportunity many people get in a work environment. So I was very appreciative of that opportunity.
Oh, that's great. Talk a little bit about that group learning environment, because I think that sometimes people who are, let's just say, less outgoing,
Mhm.
get afraid of those kinds of environments and maybe putting themselves out there. But talk about how that worked for you, and what did you learn? What did you experience in that group environment?
So you definitely you have to pull yourself back if you're one of the talkers sometimes. So
Mm,
taking over taking over any situation. It's something I know there's a couple of us that have to maybe listen more and talk less, because sometimes when those people in the background open their mouths, you're just amazed at the wisdom that comes out of it. You just got to give them the opportunity and the audience to say it. So I think that is something I learned too. Just because you're not talking, it doesn't mean you don't have the knowledge to definitely add and improve the situation.
mm. Interesting. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. What are some areas of your own personal growth that you felt like being a part of the group has contributed to for you?
Well, the confidence that I do tend to display more now was not something that I always had. I think now, I mean, I have a lot of younger coworkers, and they're so confident and so aware of themselves and what they're after. And it was not something I had at the same age. And I'm in this leadership group with people younger than me, people that are older than me, all kinds of different experiences.
Yeah.
And just to understand their background, understand what they do bring to the table, never writing anyone off, and just getting to hear all that together and growing with my own confidence to be seen as a leader and to speak up like a leader. That just being in that group together really helped me. I
Mm.
feel it helped me to speak as a leader in those type of situations also.
Yeah, that's a great learning. I mean, to me, it's one of the things that I personally have learned too from group environments where if I'm willing to speak up and I'm willing to speak into, but then also I'm also willing to listen.
Mhm.
I can learn so much from that. I know that I talk about the power of silence, because when we ask a question and then we're silenced, we shut up after that. That silence is sometimes all people need, and
Mhm.
and a lot of times it's uncomfortable silence, right?
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. You sounded like you were going to add something
Well,
else.
no, I was just thinking in my since we started together, my role here has changed dramatically from
Yeah.
a role that I'm very comfortable in performing as a manager of the department that I helped to develop and to help and to grow out from that. And then I was asked to step into a role that suddenly became available that I never even considered as a possibility in my career. So I was looking for additional responsibilities and opportunities, and I knew not saying yes to this role would mean I'd have to sit back and wait for something else. It was the opportunity to grow, and it was not a comfortable opportunity. But I did accept it, and I had to sit back and be silent often because I had to ask questions because I didn't, and I had to ask questions of people who may be reporting to me, and I was leaning on their knowledge and their capabilities to train me in this position that I'm still learning to get comfortable in. So um, that was a big change in being part of this situation, this group where there were people and they were supporting me and cheering me on and also helping to push me to the next level in my own new position was a great encouragement to me.
That's fantastic to hear. So talk a little bit about getting outside your comfort zone, because that was one of the first things that we talked about
Mm-hmm.
in the group, is that being a leader, you got to get outside your comfort zone. So talk about, that transition from that place where you were pretty comfortable, you knew your
Yeah.
job. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
into a role where you don't know what
Right.
you're doing yet and you're learning it. Talk about that a little bit. How was that for you?
So it was a big change. It was total different duties. It It was no longer managing the group of people that I had been managing, that I had a great relationship with, to having new reports and having to almost reacquaint myself with parts of the company that I didn't have to worry about the last couple of years. So I really had to pull back knowledge from the pool I had inside of me on different print methods and finishing methods and how things all ran through production, because I was focused on one particular portion of the company. And now I have to understand the scope of everything coming through this building.
Yeah.
So it really made me have to reacquaint myself with things. And again, it made me humble enough to know that I didn't know all the answers.
Yeah.
And that I had to ask the questions and I had to listen to people. But it also, while we were meeting with the emerging leaders group, I know that I have been here for a while. I do have some history and I know some things.
Sure.
I can bring stuff to the table. So I also had to build myself up to have that confidence to speak up and say what I thought. And maybe I wasn't always right, but to put it out there, because I know I would regret it if I didn't say it. So
Right.
I'm trying to have less regrets and say it, but also think about it before I say it, so it doesn't come off as know-it-all, but come off as someone who definitely can bring something to the table.
To me, I think that's one of the greatest learnings of a leader, is to be able to recognize your strengths and yet be humble enough to be able to know that I don't know all the answers, but there are a few things that I do know, and I want to put it out there. I think that's terrific. I think, and that bridging that gap between, knowing what you know, and yet being able to open yourself up and do what we called vulnerability-based trust, being vulnerable to be able to say, hey, you're better at that than I am. Or, how do you do this? I don't know. That's the sign, A, of a good leader, but also B, it also builds trust on the team as well. I think, and we've talked a lot about that as well. If you were talking to your younger self, what would you tell yourself that now, as you've been learning, as you've been growing? What would you tell that younger self?
I would make sure that I speak up. That's the big part. I spent a lot of time sitting back in the background and letting things happen around me instead of getting involved in the happenings. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know more than you even think you know. And if you don't say it out loud, nobody knows it's a thought in your head.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to ask for what you want either. If you see something that's not going the way you think it should be, bring it to someone's attention, and don't just come with problems, come with solutions. That's a big thing. People can complain that things aren't going the way they're supposed to, but if you don't have a way to fix it, then you're just wasting your breath. So,
right.
So that's a big thing. I'm sure I've spent time in my career complaining that things weren't going the way they wanted to, but being prepared and looking into solutions is definitely something that I would encourage all younger people to think about.
That's great. So what's next for you? Like, where are you wanting to grow next? If you were to, kind of think out your next year, is there an area or two that you say, hey, I really need to grow in this area, and this is something I'm going to focus on? Anything like that comes to mind?
There are. I'm aware that there's some technical sides of the business that I'm not as familiar with. I'm much more comfortable with the project management end of things, and not as much with the machinery and the capabilities and the rates. And those are all things that are very important to scheduling. So
sure.
It is something that I'm continuing to try and learn, and to depend on the people that are comfortable with those machines and the operators, and making sure I understand, I know everybody's name too. So as a leader, I think it's important that you recognize people that are working hard every day, and to get to know them and understand them. So that's one of the ways I want to grow. I'm also interested in continuing to lead and to be, I'm a big Hamilton fan, so I'm going to say in the room where it happens.
Yes.
Is I want to be part of this, the decisions for the company up front. So I'm hoping to continue to grow within the executive leadership at IDL and to get to have my part of that. So that's something I continue to grow into.
Yeah.
I hope I'm growing into. So
Yeah.
and work towards.
No, that's great. You know, and one of my personal mentors, John Maxwell, talks about the importance of being in the room and that proximity effect, and the proximity principle. And I just interviewed not too long ago a gentleman who's tied to private equity and angel investing. He's an entrepreneur, and he talked about his own journey about wanting to get invited to the room and making sure that he was always doing the things to get invited to the room. So I think that's a great aspiration, and something that you said earlier that you would have said to your younger self is like, be prepared. And that was the thing that he did to make sure that he was, always got an invitation. So I think you're on the right track, Kristin. If there was, any advice that you would give to an emerging leader anywhere in any company, what would you tell them for their own, personal growth, personal leadership journey? What advice would you have for them?
I would say don't just sit back and wait for opportunities to come to you. Work to grab them. Invite yourself into situations where you can, even if you're not offering anything, you can learn from other people who are offering things. Don't just dial it in. Involved and get to know your coworkers, get to be a part of employee engagement, get to be part of just getting to know the people around you. Show up for the anniversary parties and for the different events that people are, that's where you can make a difference too in somebody's life, not just in the company.
Yeah. That even reminds me of just being human and connecting on the human level and practicing the human touch to be able to connect with your fellow humans that you're working around. And I think the one thing that I always like to tell people too is that we're people. We're not machines and we're not robots. And so your advice, I think, is great, to be able to connect with the people that are around you. I love that.
And it certainly makes work more fun too. When
absolutely.
Working with people you can call your friends, not just your coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being a part of this conversation, Kristin. I think you've been a great addition to the group, and I appreciate your playing full out, because you're always ready to go, and I really do appreciate that. Any last words? Any final thoughts that you have just on your own journey, leadership, anything?
I want to thank you for the opportunities you keep giving to me too, and the conversations we had. That it's definitely helped me to be more confident in my journey and to keep reaching out for more. So I want to thank you for that. And I would encourage anybody who has an opportunity to be a part of this in the future to grab it. It's one of those opportunities you can grab. And whether you're someone who sits in the background, who only speaks the wisdom when it's quiet everywhere around you, or you're one of the talkers in the front, everybody's going to learn and everyone's going to grow from it.
That's awesome. Thank you for those kind words. I really do appreciate that. And just as we wrap up here, one final thing that I'll tell our listeners is that on December 12th, we are having an Emerging Leader Inner Circle live event where people from the Emerging Leader Inner Circle will be coming together in person. And I would love to invite you to that live event. If you have an interest in growing yourself or your leaders in your company, if you're a leader of a company or a leader of a division and you want to bring your team there, please send me a note. I'll put my email address at the bottom of this after recording and post-production, but it's simply david@davidmcglennon.com. Feel free to reach out to me. or put a comment below in the comment section, and I can reach back out to you with some more information. But thanks again, Kristin, for being here. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate people like you who want to grow, who are hungry for growth, and are really just being comfortable being uncomfortable.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Kristin. Take care.
Okay, you too.